Real simple technique today comes from the private training work I've done for game developers. It still finds its way into the club projects in Gamkedo Club that some of the leads pitch, but it's kind of probably universal enough that you can find ways to apply it even outside of games. And all it's about is that when the first thing that comes to your mind is maybe not even ambitious, but out of beginner reach, the productive way to fill that gap is to identify what are the projects you can take on that by doing them are going to help make that project you're aiming for easier. And so an easy way to look at this, right? So let's say that the game you want to work on has several different kind of core features to it. Maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's a platformer with some adventure elements, some leveling up and some of those kind of things. Okay, well can we fragment that out into simpler, lighter weight component pieces, not as standalone kind of libraries or anything, but really as small, simple, self-standing games. So, okay, before we're focusing on a Metroidvania type environment where there's tons of content, tons of space to explore, tons of bosses, and that's kind of the expectation of the genre, maybe something more kind of in the family of, in the indie world, Super Crate Box, or in the retro arcade world, Bubble Bobble, where basically one screen space. You've got still platforming movement, but you're now confined to your design space being a single screen, and the mechanics are going to have to be different to accommodate the kind of game, but it's going to help give you exposure first to various kind of things about platformer collisions, platformer movement, some basics and fundamentals you're going to be able to reuse as you build into a larger space. Another kind of angle into that has to do with trying to write character dialogue for characters in those kind of spaces. That can be very much its own pretty massive hurdle if you're newer to doing those kind of things. I've found projects in my past, some of the few that I ever started that kind of got good progress but never finished, what often killed those really was the writing component. The sheer volume of writing that had to be produced overwhelmed me as someone who didn't really feel like I had a background or comfort in that particular skill set. And so, okay, perhaps then if that's part of the goal is to write interesting characters in an interesting bigger space, then as another kind of stepping stone towards it, it's not just about adding that on top of your kind of, like I said, Bubble Bobble-esque Super Crate Box style one-screen platformer game. It might also be, all right, make a project in Twine, where the whole focus is having to write in a way that's compelling, where you're going to have to be able to plan out, focus on the writing, be able to iterate on that. And again, not as a prototype for, not as using the same characters or elements or features as what you want to be building towards, but to kind of stretch those muscles, to kind of exercise those areas mentally and creatively and process-wise before you're applying them on something else. A common sort of way to look at this that I've also used as kind of a repeating point over the years is that by the time you're doing something in a project where it's important to you, whether it's important to you because you're doing it as a commercial endeavor, whether it's important to you because it's just something you've had in your heart and on your mind for a lot of years and you really want to not get it wrong, then one of the ways we can help defend those things from being full of beginner errors and frustrations and disappointment how it comes out is to try our best to make sure that by the time we're tackling any piece of that, it's our second, third, fourth time hitting those problems. That we're not struggling through it for our very first time trying to write a level editor if it's on this sort of personal magnum opus, that instead by that time we're able to draw upon, okay, here's how I did it in the past, here's what worked or didn't in the past, and that comes from those smaller projects where they're done kind of as a means to prepare you for the other thing. Obviously, they can still be nice in your portfolio, they can still be beneficial learning experiences, they can still be creatively valid in their own right. You don't want to have to write these off entirely as just being an exercise, like an assignment. But it can be a really valuable way to make sure you're getting momentum, you're getting progress and process through the full cycle of development where you're having to close things out and patch up bugs you were ignoring and putting a menu in front and deploying it to itch and all the different things that we do, useful to add those stepping stone projects. All it really means is kind of lay out what would your main features and parts of the programming challenges be, or other design challenges for the game you want to move towards. How can you break those apart into 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 different little projects that aren't like a demo of the big project, that aren't necessarily a, mobile demake or anything like that, but really just trying to make sure you're practicing out the different components. So by the time you work on the big thing, you've got kind of some experience under your belt for each one of those bits and parts. But that's all I want to chat about today. Just that simple, easy strategy to apply about building and stepping stone projects. It can sound obvious once it's said. Despite that, a lot of people I've run into, it did not occur to them to do this. and can save a lot of heartache and get you off to a better start. And really, in the long run, it's about making sure that you do get to and produce that project you want to do, and you feel good about how it comes out, rather than sometimes what hurts or bounce someone off of making games is that they go too early, too soon, unprepared into the thing that's important to them. It does not come out well because it's filled with beginner errors and takes too long because of the beginner struggles and so on that they hadn't really prepared themselves adequately for, have such a negative experience or negative outcome from the project that they don't stick with game development. Obviously, at the end of the day, what I'm all about is helping make sure people are building games for a lifetime, if that's what someone's interested in doing. That's it for the day. Thanks as always for tuning in.